This month on The Buzz, you're getting a recap of everything we've covered over the past year, so stick around, you don't want to miss this. Hello and welcome to the 2016 Year in Review episode of The Buzz. I'm your host, Dion Spires. The first half of the year started off with a bang. I got the chance to speak with students and faculty from Florida Southern College and Polk State College, and we also learned about the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission in Lakeland. There were special guests from CareerSource Polk who gave tips on how to perfect your resume and land your dream job, and I even got the chance to talk with security and safety officers from the Safe Schools Division in Polk County and Florida Polytechnic University. Let's take a look back and check it out.
All we really know is that they've produced about 9 generals. They have one of the most producing general programs in the nation, so we're known for that. And we fall in the top 15% of ROTC programs. And we compete every year with our Ranger Challenge team. The past couple of years, they've done pretty well in that competition. They just did really well in our 10-miler team. They got the best military school overall, right? Second to West Point.
Second to West Point.
Wow. I want to talk about the 10-miler in just a few minutes, but how has your experience been being in such a kind of prestigious program at the college?
Well, yeah, so our program, out of our senior class, we had a pretty high rate as far as getting active duty goes, which is really competitive. So say we have 12 cadets, and there's going to be some that have National Guard or Reserve scholarships, so that's the route that they choose to go. But for the most part, I'd say about 80 to 90% of the cadets that wanted active duty got it, which is not normal. It's the national rate is much, much lower. So our program is pretty successful as far as getting cadets ready to compete for those active duty slots that are so competitive. And so that's kind of something we pride ourselves on, and our cadre really hammer home the importance of the GPA, your extracurricular activities,
community service hours.
Yeah, all the things that contribute to scoring well in the national rankings that give you the best shot at accomplishing whatever your goals are.
And we talked to Kyle already about why Florida Southern, but what was the reasoning for you, Ashley, to join Florida Southern's battalion?
I saw online that it was one of the best programs, and I like the small program because the second closest program was UCF, and they have hundreds of students, and especially in their battalion, they have a huge battalion. And when I saw that our program was only about 50 kids, it was a really good experience for us cadets to have one-on-one interactions with colonels, captains, master sergeants, things that you wouldn't see every day. And so we get that one-on-one communication with them. And so it really sets us up for proper communication skills in the military. And I really liked that.
Now, I know Polk State College is very well known throughout Polk County, and you have a ton of different campuses throughout Polk County in different locations. But what I hadn't heard about was the Polk State Corporate College, which is kind of who this program is run through, to my understanding. What exactly is the corporate college? What do you guys do there?
So we are a division within Polk State College. So we are definitely still Polk State College. Okay. And what Polk State Corporate College does is we focus on industry training, workforce education, continuing education, certifications, things like advanced manufacturing. We work with OSHA training and MSHA training, computer certifications, real estate and insurance certifications. So we cover a whole gamut of different certifications that are going to, they don't necessarily transfer into a degree, although we do have some.
Okay, so it's a little bit more of a non-traditional kind of college experience. So tell me a little bit about TramCon. That's the program specifically. Is that an acronym? Is that just a name? What does that stand for?
It is. TramCon stands for Training for Manufactured Construction. Okay. So the team that put together TramCon understood that there was a gap in what the employers needed and who was going to fill that that gap employee-wise. There's definitely a skills gap, and Bill can definitely speak to how our employer partners, our industry partners, were trying to grapple with that, and where we came in developing that curriculum to make sure we have a skilled workforce going in.
Yeah. Well, historically, within the manufactured construction or the construction industry in general, there's always a need for skilled people, and so that's what we're trying to do. Is we're looking at if we looked at the construction industry today, or even the manufactured construction, because we're talking about both site construction that could occur or within a factory environment. So we're working with really both environments. And one of the difficulties is, it's one thing to get somebody in there who might just be a warm body, but we really want to bring our employers, skilled people who can work safely, understand the basic necessities within the construction industry. So the program starts very basically in a foundations program, and all it works through a supervisory curriculum as well. So there's a vast amount of information that a student can learn.
The outdoors affects everything that we do, and then vice versa. We have positive and negative impacts on fish and wildlife. And intrinsically, humans have a connection to the outdoors. I mean, there's not too many people that even if you're just driving around, you go, oh, look, there's a deer, or, look at that bird, what is that? Right. So there's just that value right there. And in Florida, our quality of life here is closely tied to our natural resources. The number one reason people move to Florida, besides the warm sunshine and lack of winter, is our natural resources, whether it's a beach or a river, or a lake, or hiking or biking. That's the number one reason. And we want to make sure that that's around. That next generation that's coming along, they're going to be the stewards of those resources. Yeah. So I would not be doing my job if I wasn't trying to pass that along.
And with that said, what are some of the biggest efforts and biggest things that people in the younger generations can do to help work towards that effort?
Oh, wow.
I know there's probably an
That's
endless
a huge,
list, but
huge question. Basic things you can do everyday life, recycle. That's huge. If you're cutting your grass, don't let your lawn clippings go down a storm drain. That goes into water. That goes into our lakes and rivers, and that changes our water quality, and not for the better. If you're using herbicides or pesticides on your lawn or on your ornamental plants, make sure you're using it properly, that you're not getting a lot of runoff. There's negative impacts there. Try and use Florida-friendly plants, native plants in your landscaping. That benefits local neighborhood wildlife. If you like pets, if you've got a cat, let's say. And I'm a cat owner. Don't let your cat outside to hunt if you can do that, because neighborhood cats eat a lot of migratory birds. All those little songbirds that you see, the numbers are staggering. If you have a pet, say a pet snake, all right, or a goldfish, first of all, it's illegal for you to release that in the wild. So find another home for it. We have an amnesty program. This is kind of a sidebar, but we have an amnesty program for non-native critters that are pets. So let's say you went out and bought a boa back when you were in high school, and it was a foot long when you bought it. Right. Kind of cool, Your buddies come over and you watch it eat mice, and then pretty soon you're feeding it rats, and then the next thing you know, you're feeding it rabbits. Now you're doing more rabbits, and the thing's 10, 12 feet long. Now what do you do with it? Right. Don't let it go in the wild, please. Find one of our amnesty days and we'll find a home for it.
Okay.
So just, non-native pet release, no. Non-native plants, if you can help it, use more native plants in your landscaping. That kind of thing.
Now, Michelle, you talked earlier about a little bit about what kind of skills you can put on a resume. But if you don't have experience, say an internship or a previous job in the field, it's hard to build your resume to suit what you're trying to pursue. So can you elaborate a little bit on what you kind of touched on before with what kind of skills you can use to build up a resume and how you do that?
Well, a great place to start is to emphasize soft skills. These are things like showing up on time, being able to work well with others, or taking the initiative. And we're finding that these soft skills are things that employers don't necessarily train on. They can train you to do the job. And so when you can start addressing that you bring talent to the table and that you're willing to learn and you're willing to be trained, you can start to create a resume around those. And then of course include any unpaid volunteering type work, maybe with church or with a personal family member that you've worked with. And school accomplishments are a great way to start your resume.
Another way is for if they can, they really want to get in their foot in the door. So what they want to get is an entry-level job or a part-time job. Because with entry-level jobs, usually don't need the work experience. You know, you just need, like what Michelle was saying, you just need to have talent. Or if an employer can see there's a potential in you, they will likely employ you. What we do offer the employers, however, to help at least help, you know, students that are still have no work experience, is we offer this grant called the on-the-job training. So with the on-the-job training, what it can help an employer is that it can help subsidize an employee's wages until their probationary period.
Now let's talk about the form of a resume a little bit. I know, Michelle, in your position, you see a ton of resumes. Albert, I'm sure you've seen some yourself, and you've both written them yourselves. What are some of the most common mistakes that someone can make when they're building up their resume?
So the first thing I see is grammar errors. It's, you know, you really gotta have, you can write a resume and you might think it's perfect, but you have to have at least a few set of other eyes that are looking at it, because you might not catch what they're gonna catch. And you know, that is the resume is your first impression to an employer, because they don't even see you face to face, they first see your resume. So you want to make sure that's actually perfect and it's grammar free, because it does leave an impression when you do have mistakes on them.
Well, given that the employer has a lot of resumes to go through, really consolidating your information to just highlights of accomplishments, achievements, less is more. And so they don't want to read a novel, they just want the highlights. I like to use the analogy of a trailer. To a movie that you would go to watch, you would want to see the trailer, and that just is a little bit of information. It's not chronological, it's highlights. And so if you can highlight the best about you on the page, then the employer wants to call you in, and that's the movie where you get a chance to elaborate on your plot and all the things that you did to make that movie the great and wonderful movie that it is.
Safe Schools came about because we care about the children. As you know, active shooters and those that would pose a risk to our children and to our school administration is a problem. So we have been contracted by the school board, by Polk State College, and also by Southeastern College to be their director of security. And our goal is to put plans in place, to put training in place, and to create an atmosphere where children can learn and teachers feel safe. As a result, we saw our Safe Schools program growing, and we actually created a division last year of Safe Schools. That way we have infrastructure together and supervisors together that solely supervise school-related security, law enforcement, and safety practices.
One of the biggest ways I think that a student can take the initiative to prepare themselves is just to be aware of their surroundings, aware of what's going on. What are some tips that you guys have for students to become more aware of their surroundings?
Something that's very important for everyone to understand is that they're integral to our system working well. We don't have investigators who go out there and are so brilliant that they can solve every crime on their own. We need people to be involved and give us information, intelligence. And so the same principle applies to the school. It's important for our students and our staff to be involved. They are the people that make up that little city or that group of people. And so they need to make sure that when they see something, that they say something, that we develop a sense of urgency with them, not a sense of complacency, because although these things happen rarely, they do happen, and so they need to be prepared, and their ability to give us information is really important, and they can do that by giving us information through Crime Stoppers, talking directly to the people who are assigned to the campuses, or even calling the sheriff's office directly to give us that information.
Here's your sandwich, miss.
Oh, thank you.
And your burger.
Awesome, thank you.
And your bowl of boiling water, sir.
Nearly everyone qualifies for financial aid, and all you gotta do is fill out the FAFSA.
During the second half of the year, I was lucky enough to attend Polk State College's third annual Criminal Justice Teach-In at the Center for Public Safety in Winter Haven. Sergeant Craig Powers and Lieutenant Ryan Shea gave invaluable tips on what to do when confronted with an active shooter situation. I traveled to Airside Center East in Lakeland and explored Polk State College's amazing aerospace program, where program director Eric Crump gave me a tour and showed me around the inside of one of their airplanes. We took a trip to Lake Wales to check out Warner University's Agricultural Studies program, and we also stressed the importance of voting, volunteering, and reducing the stigma surrounding mental health issues. Let's take a look back.
Follow the instructions of any police officers. Don't, hey, well, I think I should go this way. If they tell you go behind them, just keep in that direction, listen to them, and follow their direction. Do not attempt to move wounded people. Okay, that's a personal decision that you're going to have to make. But why are we telling you that as a concept? If someone has been shot and you're on your way out and they're in the middle of the floor, and you and another person spend an additional 2 or 3 minutes trying to help that person up, and they're dead weight at that point. They're just, they're sagging. They may not be able to help themselves. Understand that 2 more people may lose their life. Okay, that's a hard decision, and that's something you'd have to internalize and decide on your own. And you may say, the way I was brought up, my religious beliefs, I'm going to try to help this person, even if it means potentially dying. But just understand, the more people that stop and try to help the wounded initially, the numbers are going to continue to rise of the people that are being killed during the event, okay? When you get to a safe place, or wherever that be, into hiding, which we'll discuss in the next slide, or outside, try to get on your phone and dial 911 and update the operator, dispatcher, with the information that you might have regarding the shooter, if you have it. If you don't have any information, don't call 911. Just say, I was able to get out of the building, and I have nothing else to offer. They understand that somebody else is going to have more important information. But if you saw the shooter down the hallway or something like that, you would call in and give that information if you have it.
Now, with your position that you're in now, we talked about before how you're working with a younger demographic. You're kind of trying to help them realize why it's important to vote, get them set up to do it. What is the hardest part of your job that you've got to do?
Well, really the hardest part of my job is expecting the unexpected, which is also the most exciting part of my job. Every day at the elections office, there's always something new going on, and really it's all of our jobs to just everybody get together and get what needs to be done. So.
And being that you're still fairly young, it's probably fresh in your memory whenever you started voting. Was there any, just to make you kind of relatable to the audience, was there any apprehension or any nerves going into your first time voting, and how did you overcome that, if so?
Honestly, I didn't,
no?
But I think it's just because of my family background. Like, they've always told me your vote counts, no vote, no voice. So I mean, I signed up in high school, George Jenkins High School, in the cafeteria. I had no hesitations, and then I had no hesitations to vote for president, I think 2014, when I was able to vote for the first time. So
okay.
I was pretty excited about it.
Yeah, that's definitely great to know, your voice counts, have that reinforced from a young age, because that definitely will make you more comfortable, I think.
And I always try to tell my friends too, who are a little apprehensive, I'm like, no vote, no voice. You should vote.
Yeah, because
it's not hard.
Every vote does count for sure. I know that I was nervous whenever I went the first time. That's why I asked. I went with my mom. I didn't want to go by myself. I was 18 years old, but I still felt like I wanted that security blanket of someone's there that I know waiting in the line with me and whatnot.
I remember I went by myself, but then they all clapped for me because they're like, oh, it's your first time voting. And like the whole precinct clapped for me. And that was a little embarrassing. I mean, I liked it though. I think that was the only thing I was like, oh.
That's funny. You get a little celebration for it.
Yeah, which is a good thing though. You should applaud everyone for first-time voters.
Definitely. Here with Eric Crump, and I came out to his turf at the aerospace campus for Polk State College to find out what the students get to work hands-on with in these airplanes right behind me. Eric, let's get inside and find out what's in there.
Have at it.
All right.
Watch your step.
I hope I don't fall.
It wouldn't be the first time, probably.
Oh, I'm sure. And just slide across. It's not quite as hot as I expected.
Okay, so this is your standard training airplane. This is a Piper Cadet.
Okay.
They actually build these airplanes in Vero Beach, Florida, oddly enough. So, Florida airplane flying in Florida, it's used to the heat, I guess. So anyway, in front of you, you have your primary flight instruments. So these primary 6 instruments are what all of our students are going to learn to use. And they're not really that shocking things that you would expect to find in an airplane. Your airspeed indicator, your attitude indicator, where the airplane is in space, altitude, a turn coordinator, again, kind of a bank and roll instrument also, heading indicator, where am I going, and vertical speed, am I going up or down, okay? Engine instruments are down below you, and then you have navigation instruments here, GPS to help you find your way, and your radio stack, switches. And unlike your car, if you notice in the feet there in the floor, you have 2 rudder pedals. When you're on the ground, you're actually going to steer with your feet, like this. You have 2 separate brake pedals. One of these is not a gas pedal. This is the gas pedal. This is your throttle lever. It's going to push it up to go faster, pull it down to go slower.
Cool.
And this is your standard basic training airplane.
Nice.
But you've got good visibility. It's a low wing airplane, so you've got good visibility up above you, and it's just incredibly stable. It's a great first training platform.
When do the students get to start flying these planes? Is it right away or
Day one?
Day one.
Day one.
Wow.
Yep. First week of the semester. Almost everybody will get in the airplane the first week.
That's insane.
Yep.
And if you can think back to whenever you were learning how to fly a plane, what is that feeling the first time you get in?
Actually, I got my private pilot certificate in an airplane just like this one.
Really?
So every time I watch these airplanes taxi out and taxi back in, it's like a flashback to 18-year-old Eric getting a private pilot certificate.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Cool. Well, thank you for showing me the inside of this. I've never been inside of a plane, so I can't even imagine dealing with all these controls.
If only I had brought the keys out, we could take a flight real quick.
Oh, I would have took us up there.
I would bring us back, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, I don't think you want me to take a flight in here. We might not make it back.
We could do it together. It'd be fun.
Everybody eats. You know, all of us depend on agriculture. Our food, the vegetables that we eat, the fruits that we eat, even the meat that we eat, the dairy that we milk, the butter, they all come from agriculture. Because of the improved varieties that we have, we are able to feed now more people than before, because we could plant or develop a crop that have more yield, higher yielding varieties, more pest resistance. And also our area now is diminishing because of all of this urbanization. We have now lands converted to real estates and also being converted to several other uses aside from agriculture. And so land is dwindling, and so we need to produce more crops or improve the technologies that we can use. So you have to have a controlled experiment wherein you introduce those organisms. So you have one experiment here where you have the trees infected with a bacteria, the Candidatus bacteria. Another experiment that's infected with a virus, okay, a plant virus. And then another experiment that's infected with a psyllid, okay? And then you have to have a control. What is a control?
Something you just don't do nothing to.
Yeah, so untreated, so you don't have to have a treatment in your control.
So you mentioned that you guys are a food pantry, or you work with food pantries.
Right.
What is the difference between, or what is a food pantry, and what's the difference between that and a food bank?
I'm really glad you asked. We get a lot of those questions all the time. So we're the food bank, we're Agape Food Bank, and the food bank actually is the distributor of the food resources that we get from those grocers like we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And then the food pantry actually receives the food from us, the food bank, and distributes it to those people that are in need in our community.
So what types of organizations or how do you find the people in need? What types of people are you working with in our community?
So we're working with those people that say, hey, we just need a push. So, you have those people that have the light bill, their rent, and different things like that, and they'll choose a place to have, to live instead of food. And so we're finding those people through those food pantries, or also just through our social media, Facebook pages, and different things like that.
Wow. And that's crazy how powerful social media is now, because I never would have thought that that's a way that you would find someone who was in need of your support.
We also use 211, and that is a resource where people can go and call 211, give them their zip code, and they're able to provide them with our food pantries that we service, also other resources that they need throughout the community.
This cause has a lot of impact on those who really need it, and to see that impact must be rewarding for you guys. Can you tell kind of an experience, is there any that really stood out to you of someone who was really affected by this, that really kind of made it enriching for you to see this is the difference we're making?
Well, we did a video a couple years ago, and we deliver meals to them, but to hear these people really tell what it meant to them. We serve mostly elderly, but we did have one young man that had been on, he's been on for 20 years, and in his 20s had an accident which made him paralyzed. And so he couldn't talk very well, but he told me as I came in, he said, lean over, and he said, you give my mom peace of mind. His mom all these years had to work, and so bringing that meal to him, you could just tell it made a world of difference, and then to hear her talk as well. But that's just one instance.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's kind of what I was wondering about when I asked you about the homebound. Was it primarily elderly? Was it people who had accidents or had disabilities or that sort of thing? So that's amazing to hear that you guys made a difference in someone who was that young. You don't necessarily think of that when you think homebound.
Right, right.
And I know that I'm 23, and my mom, if something like that happened to me, that would be a constant weight on her mind. So to have someone like you guys must be a huge, amazing help for her.
When I was hit with mental illness, it was something that I had never even thought about having to grapple with or deal with. And so that's when I went pretty introspective into myself, trying to figure out, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? And I kind of balled it up and didn't share it with anybody. And David Satcher, former U.S. Surgeon General, has said that the #1 inhibitor for people with mental illnesses receiving treatment is stigma, because they're ashamed, they're embarrassed. So I was. And that embarrassment and that shame ultimately cost me and had me have a second manic episode. And so that's when I decided to come out of the closet about having a mental illness. But it took that second instance for me to do that. I believe that this was the Supreme Being's way of perhaps shaking me and saying, you got to come out of this stigma deal, and you got to face it head on, because it's bigger than you are. You've got to do this to try to help other people so that they can face what they're dealing with.
Now, I want to talk about a little bit of the stigma specifically for a moment. What are some of the misconceptions and the stigmas from someone who was scared and ashamed to come out and say, I have a mental illness? What are some of the things that someone is faced with when they are in that situation?
There are so many people with mental illness who are getting up every day, they're going to work, they're functioning, they're doing fine, but you hear about, some violent episode took place somewhere, and we hear this focus on violence. Most people with mental illness are not violent. The vast majority are not violent. In fact, they're more likely to be a victim of crime than to perpetrate a crime. And so I think that we need more positive efforts on the part of the media to show some of those success stories and to demonstrate that recovery is possible.
And that's it for our Year in Review episode of The Buzz. That's all the time we have for this month, but thank you for tuning in as always, and if you would like to see any of those past episodes that we featured today, you can find them on our Polk County, Florida YouTube page. I'll see you next month right here on The Buzz.